The first meeting of the joint Venezuela-Guyana Commission is underway in Brazil to address the issues related to the case of the Essequibo. In Palestine, the Red Crescent announces that the situation in Khan Yunis, south of the Gaza Strip, continues to worsen dramatically. And farmers in France have raised the tone of their protest this Thursday, demanding immediate answers from Emmanuel Macron's government. Hello and welcome to From the South. My name is Belén de los Santos and from the TeleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba, we begin with the news. The first meeting of the joint Venezuela-Guyana Commission is underway in Brazil to address the issues related to the case of the Essequibo. The ministers of foreign affairs of both countries will meet this Thursday to address the issues related to the roadmap on the Guyana-Essequibo dispute agreed between Venezuela and Guyana. On behalf of the Venezuelan delegation, the meeting will be attended by Foreign Minister Ivan Gil, the Minister of People's Power for Eco-Socialism, Josué Lorca Vega, and the agent at the International Court of Justice, Samuel Moncada. Meanwhile, on behalf of Guyana, the Foreign Minister Hugh Hilton Todd and his work team are participating. Furthermore, they are accompanied by the Community of Latin American and Caribbean States, the Caribbean Community, and the United Nations Organization. The workers' mobilization in Argentina scores its first victory by getting the courts to stop the labor reform that President Javier Milei is trying to impose. 6 articles of the Decree of Necessity and Urgency, known as DNU, were declared invalid by the National Labor Magistrate. Liliana Rodriguez Fernandez accepted a motion of protection filed by the General Labor Confederation. The ruling invalidates Articles 73, 79, 86, 87, 88, and 97 of the DNU. All of them refer to the regulation of the form of payment of salaries, treatment, and overtime, and collective bargaining agreements. These articles will only be in force if the Congress ratifies them before February 15th. And also in Argentina, the workers' union has demanded the parliamentarians reject the government's law that violate the rights of citizens. This is what union leaders said in front of more than 1.5 million people gathered in the surroundings of the Congress in the city of Buenos Aires on Wednesday. The general day of strike against the economic adjustment measures and the omnibus bill was felt all over the nation and in the capital city. The demonstrations of discontent was forceful. In front of the multitude, the workers' union leaders called on the parliamentarians not to negotiate in the dark the laws that violate the rights of the working class. Peru's judiciary has rejected the 5 appeals lodged by former President Pedro Castillo, who is still under investigation for various crimes. The judicial body stated that the former president will have to continue serving pre-trial detention after his appeals were unanimously declared unfounded. He was requesting a review of the proceedings against him for alleged crimes of rebellion, collusion, and criminal organization. The former president requested a review of his pre-trial detention of the exception of inadmissibility of action for the crime of rebellion and a protection of rights, all of which were unanimously rejected by the court. In Venezuela, those arrested for participating in destabilization plans said that among their plans were operations to sabotage the oil industry and hinder the distribution of fuel nationwide.
In 2017, Mr. Luis González Pin, a classmate of mine from the military lyceum, contacted me to travel to the city of Calcutta to meet with some people. When I made that trip, Mr. Ricardo, commander of commission, there were 3 more people, Luis González and myself. Basically, those people, what they wanted was a sabotage of the system of inclusion to the defense office in Venezuela. They gave me a handwritten paper with instructions on how the operation should be carried out, and that I had to recruit people in the institution to carry out this procedure of sabotage in the oil industry to end the distribution of fuel at national level and worsen the situation of the country in this area.
Meanwhile, those involved in destabilization attempts in Venezuela claimed to have been hired by Colombian authorities to carry out an attack against the nation.
In 2018, I was recruited by Daniel Rivas and Miguel Morales and Adolfo Moras to cause a collapse in the pipeline from Yagua to the refinery, and they were hired by some people from Colombia.
In Ecuador, the Economic Development Commission of the National Assembly approved on Wednesday to debate the proposal to raise the value-added tax, or VAT. But 5 votes in favor and 4 against from the Citizens' Revolution Movement and the Social Christian Party gave way to the regulation, which foresees an increase of 12 to 15% for 2 years and 30% permanently. The parties that opposed the measure presented alternatives to avoid a tax increase that would impact the pockets of the citizens. However, Valentina Centeno, parliamentarian and president of the commission, ruled out discussing these reports with the minority. Finally, in addition to a mixed VAT increase, the bill provides for a contribution of between 15 and 25% to banks with profits over 10 million. On Wednesday in Haiti, members of the National Protected Area Surveillance Brigade rebelled against the government and announced their support to the civil struggles seeking to form a new administration. In this context, members of the Haitian Protected Areas Brigade also rejected the Haitian Prime Minister's dismissal of their commander, Gentil Joseph, and demanded that the Haitian government respect humble and hard-working people who want a better nation. The dismissal occurred after members of the Vigilance Brigade expressed that they were supporting the people in their claim against the current administration. In this sense, the military called on the people to revolt against the government of Ariel Henry. And we stay in Haiti, where 6 nuns who had been kidnapped by an armed group in the capital of Port-au-Prince were released on Wednesday. The 6 nuns of the Congregation of the Sisters of Santa Ana, the driver, and another passenger in the bus in which they were traveling to an educational center in the capital were kidnapped in a central avenue near the presidential palace. The criminal group had demanded $3 million in exchange for their release. It is not known if this amount was paid and other details about the release. The number of kidnappings of strangers and public figures in Port-au-Prince and on some national highways has increased in the recent months. And the United States is set to execute for the first time a prisoner using nitrogen, a method that, according to the United Nations, is considered torture. Kenneth Smith was sentenced to death for killing a woman for hire in 1988. He received the death penalty in the state of Alabama by lethal injection, but at the moment of the execution, the guards had problems with the defendant's veins. This new attempt, which is legal in that state, consists of placing a marker with oxygen, which is progressively replaced with nitrogen. The experts affirm that it prolongs the physical suffering and agony, and it is desperate. The UN Human Rights Rapporteur, Ravina Shamdasani, assured that from the perspective of the international law, this is a case of torture.
It happens because it sets a new standard. It lowers humanity at the level of a state that has a frenzy and a killing fury against one individual.
And let's take a short break, but remember you can join us on TikTok at TeleSUR English, where you will find news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up, stay with us. Welcome back. In Palestine, the Red Crescent announces that the situation in Khan Yunis, south of the Gaza Strip, worsens dramatically. Jagan Champagne, the Secretary General of the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, expressed his condolences. He affirmed that the headquarters had been attacked by the troops of the occupant. In the bombing on Wednesday, 3 civilians sheltering in their facilities were killed. The United Nations office in Gaza ratifies the situation, assuring that the hospitals Al-Nasser, Al-Amal, Al-Aqsa, and the Red Crescent ambulances headquarters are completely besieged. No one can leave or enter, including 400 kidney patients requiring urgent treatment. And criminal Israeli attacks on Gaza persist on the 111th day of the siege, with a brutal attack on people who are waiting in line for humanitarian aid in northern Gaza. Noor Harasin is on the ground with all the details.
Talking about the latest on the ground, 20 people were killed and more than 50 were injured when they were waiting for aid at the Al-Kuwaiti Square in northern Gaza by the heavy Israeli shelling and also airstrikes. Here is just to explain what exactly happening in northern Gaza. People in northern Gaza have been hungry and thirsty for weeks now. Very little aid is actually entering northern Gaza, so Palestinians do head to the squares where the aid trucks enters the Gaza Strip rather than staying in their homes or in their shelters and wait for the distribution of the aid. So a number of Palestinians were waiting for the aid at the Al-Kuwaiti Square when the Israeli forces targeted them. 20 people were killed and more than 50 were reported injured. This comes after the Israeli attack on the UN facility, the UN training center, where 12 people were killed and more than 50 were reported injured. So yes, Israel continues its very intensive attacks on Palestinians here in Gaza for the 111th day. Meanwhile, here in the streets in Rafah, Palestinians are hopeful and they are waiting for the day of Friday when they witness the outcome from the international court. They are, some of them are actually excited and happy that maybe the outcome will pressure Israel into stopping its operation in Gaza. Others are not that optimistic. They do think that whatever the outcome is, Israel will continue its operation on Gaza no matter what. Noor Harasin, TeleSUR, Gaza.
On Thursday, President of Iran, Ebrahim Raisi, demanded the political and economic isolation of Israel and called for regional unity to achieve a just world order. In the framework of his visit to Turkey, Iran's president stressed that cutting the lifelines would be an effective way of ending Israel's oppression and murders. For his part, the Iranian leader, Israel, also ratified that the United Nations Organization and other international organisms have lost their effectiveness. In this sense, when referring to the Gaza conflict, Ebrahim Raisi reiterated his request for unity of the Muslim countries and other nations to save Gaza and to a certain extent to the rest of the humanity. For his part, he also explained that cutting off all forms of access with Israel is an effective way to end the genocidal operation against the Palestinian people. Hundreds of protesters blocked Tel Aviv's main highway on Wednesday night, calling on the government to secure the immediate release of more than 100 hostages in the Gaza Strip. The march was part of the National Day of Rage led by a women's group under the slogan "Women Demand Life." The rallies extended throughout the day and across the nation, with the main demonstration being downtown Tel Aviv. The demonstrations were the latest show of displeasure with the government by families of the hostages and many of their supporters. The protesters say the hostages are in grave danger and time is running out to bring them home. Police cleared the marchers off the Ayalon highway before the crowd gathered outside the nearby building where the Israeli military and defense ministry are headquartered. And the Israeli government acknowledged on Wednesday that its economy has been affected by attacks by Yemeni armed forces on commercial vessels linked to Tel Aviv operations. According to local media, the Israeli port of Eilat has experienced at least $3 billion in direct economic losses, as the import and export of goods to and from Israel has been affected by the attacks on ships in the Red Sea. According to Israeli sources, the transshipment scope of all Israeli seaports was significantly reduced by 70%. In turn, the Houthis claim that the operation started on November 14th will continue until the end of Tel Aviv's illegal war in the Gaza Strip. And meanwhile, in Yemen, Houthi authorities order U.S. and British United Nations personnel and humanitarian organizations to leave the country within a month. The decision follows U.S. and British attacks with support of other nations on the group's military assets. The United States claims that the military action intends to stop attacks on international shipping in the Red Sea, while the Houthis state that their attacks are in solidarity with the Palestinians after Israel's aggression against Gaza. And now we have a second short break coming up. But before we invite you to join our WhatsApp community for our English-speaking audience, you can scan the QR code on screen to join directly and also share the link to reach more people. Constant news coverage of Latin America and the Caribbean as well as the rest of the world. Stay connected and informed with TeleSUR. Final short break, don't go away. Welcome back. Farmers in Brittany and France have raised the tone of their protest this Thursday. In addition to blocking roads, they're dumping crops and building bonfires as they demand immediate answers from Emmanuel Macron's government. The first major crisis for the newly appointed Premier, Gabriel Attal, who has summoned for this very Thursday the heads of the economy, environment and agriculture. Farm workers have warned that they will blockade Paris if their demands are not heard. All the departments of the country have started to mobilize, and the list of demands has already reached 40 points. They are asking for tax exemptions for agricultural fuel to be maintained and for a change in European policies and imports and environmental regulations, among other points which they warn are non-negotiable. And the Vatican sentenced priest Gabriel Martinelli to 2 years and 6 months in prison on Wednesday for sexual abuse. The Court of Appeal overturned a first-degree sentence against Martinelli, finding him guilty of corruption of minors for a series of abuses committed between 2007 and 2012 against another student at the pre-seminary St. Pius X. For her part, the victim's lawyers highlighted the importance of the sentence, describing it as historic and demanding justice for her client who has experienced years of suffering. The conviction, the first of its kind in Vatican territory, represents a significant step in the fight against sexual abuse in the Church. The Federal Service for Military Technical Cooperation of Russia commented on Wednesday on the intention of the President of Ecuador, Daniel Noboa, to transfer weapons and military equipment of Russian manufacture to the United States without obtaining the corresponding permission from the Russian Federation. The Russian agency said that if this were to happen, Ecuador would be violating its international obligations. It added that the agreement between Moscow and Quito on military technical cooperation signed in 2008 stipulates that the transfer of military items obtained as a result of the bilateral military technical cooperation to a third party is unacceptable without the prior written consent of the Russian Federation. The agency's response comes after Noboa's statement in which he assured that his country would deliver to Washington Russian and Ukrainian military machinery in disuse in exchange for modern equipment. On Wednesday, 57 migrants, among them 7 minors, were rescued 5 kilometers from the coast of city of Dakhla in the occupied Western Sahara. For their part, the Moroccan authorities reported that the boat in which the migrants were found, all of sub-Saharan origin, was heading to the Canary Islands. In this sense, the Moroccan authority assured that the migrants received medical attention before they left, transferred to Dakhla at the disposal of the Royal Gendarmerie. According to the official records in 2023, about 87,000 migrants in an irregular situation with destination to Spain were intercepted. In the midst of the wave of fires affecting Colombia, President Gustavo Petro decreed a state of natural disaster to deal with the ravages caused by El Niño weather phenomenon. Hundreds of municipalities in the Latin American country report strong fires, which have reached the eastern hills of the capital city of Bogotá. According to the latest report issued on Wednesday by the Ministry of the Environment and Risk Management Unit, 952 municipalities are threatened by the fires. Of these, 586 are under red alert and another 33 face landslide threats.
It is not an emergency. This is called a natural disaster. It is an authority that the government has with the purpose of declaring the situation, and what it produces in practice is that they can override some items of the budget to another party, obviously with the purpose of solving problems that have a result of the firefighting. The helicopters are put in function to stop the fires or to move resources to have tank cars that can be used in chaos with municipalities that have water problems and etc. Then, the decree allows to move items to blow problems of disasters.
And in China, at least 39 dead and 9 injured were reported as a result of a fire in the basement of a store in the city of Hsinchu, located in the eastern province of Jiangxi. According to local authorities, the rescue work has been concluded and the area has been evaluated. The fire department reported that at least 15 units were found to be at risk of fire, 7 of which are located in the same district where the tragedy occurred. In this regard, President Xi Jinping urged the regions and departments to assess the potential risks and assume the responsibilities to prevent serious casualties, ensure the safety of people's lives and property. The causes of the accident are still unknown, and an investigation is underway to clarify the cause. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, my name is Belén de los Santos. Thank you for watching.